Hello and welcome to the Republic of Football. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson. Thank you for joining us alongside Carter Yates. What's up, man?
November football, starting to be high stakes, you know. Every game matters now, so I can't be doing better than I am right now.
At most levels, obviously in the high school level, we got playoffs going on, but then, of course, college football, we'll talk more about why these games, every single game matters now from here on out.
Pre-playoff,
and big conference title season. Hello, Mallory in the other room, making us sound
Hi.
Nice. And, of course, we got senior writer Mike Craven on the line. How you doing, Craven?
Doing pretty good. Y'all acted as if I was ducking the smoke last week with the North Texas UTSA game. Just wanted to check with Mallory what the score was of that.
You know what's crazy? I don't even remember. I don't even remember.
You've wiped it from your mind.
I wiped it from my mind.
That's crazy. Craven, what was the score of that game if you were here?
You don't have to say that.
A lot too little.
Yeah.
I think I did. Maybe it wasn't too Craven, but I did say that there is a possibility that not Michigan State, North Texas will lose that game.
Freudian slip there from talking about the Spartans.
I know, seriously.
Craven, interesting you pop back in, though, after the big win.
That's right.
All right, so quick rundown of today's show. We got talk about the power poll. We're going to have a little bit more of a discussion today. Of course, we got an interview with Josh Cameron as well, Baylor wide receiver. Stay tuned for that. We're going to have a little bit more of a discussion piece today. We're going to talk a little bit conference races, specifically the SEC, the ACC, and the Conference USA. Conferences that definitively have a Texas team very much still in the mix. We'll kind of have the bulk of the show take care of that. And, of course, we'll talk about this week's slate of games in the back half. Kind of a little bit of a extended lightning round. We won't go as quick as we usually do in those, but maybe not as in-depth as a spotlight game. So, without further ado, though, that'll be our breakdown of that. And, of course, we got the power poll. And, then we'll go ahead and get out of here. But before we do, of course, I want to give a quick word from our sponsors.
Be Well Texas helps people who are struggling with the use of alcohol or drugs. They offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere in Texas. Find help for you or a loved one today.
Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Call 888-85-BE-WELL.
Thank you again to our friends at Be Well Texas. Mallory, if you throw up that home field graphic really quickly. Of course, if you are watching this, you see our promo code DCTF for 10% off your first time purchase at homefieldapparel.com. It is getting cooler outside, so if you want a new jacket, long sleeve, pullover, whatever you need, Home Field Apparel has you covered if you want some of the best vintage/retro college merch on the market. If you support any of the FBS Texas teams, I believe, except Texas State and Sam Houston, you can go to homefieldapparel.com and find something you will like. Again, that is promo code DCTF for 10% off your first-time purchase at homefieldapparel.com. All right, Mallory, let's throw up the power poll really quickly before we get into our conference discussion, because this kind of sets the stage for what we're going to be talking about. Not much movement in the top 7, I guess. There was a lot of movement kind of in the bottom half of the power poll, though. Craven, what result last week, if you had to pick one, what result last week kind of do you think impacted things the most, particularly in the bottom half?
Well, it was UTSA beating North Texas.
Yeah.
Now North Texas is on a 4-game losing streak. They kind of dropped down to the 11th spot in front of Rice, in front of UTEP. I struggled with UTSA Houston, 5-5 versus 4-6. Just gave the Roadrunners the edge because they had won more recently.
Sure. All right, so again, you can check out our power poll at texasfootball.com every Saturday night, late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, presented by our friends at Ticket City. All right, let's get into our conference discussion, y'all, because we got, as Carter mentioned, it's kind of win now season. For
Pre-playoff before the playoff.
Pre-playoff before the playoff.
A little appetizer.
So let's start with the biggest conference we're going to talk about is the SEC, right? Mm-hmm. This is arguably the conference with a Texas team in the driver's seat in Texas.
Well, 2 technically. 2,
yes,
Texas and Texas A&M.
Which will kind of play out if both teams kind of take care of business. I believe, both teams take care of business this weekend. Will then culminate next weekend.
If neither team spits the bit this weekend, they control their own destiny going into the Lone Star Showdown. It'll be the highest stakes possible for the renewal of the rivalry.
Which is beautiful for a company that just put both teams on the cover of their magazine. So let's start with the SEC, and the topic of discussion is simply who wins, why. Let's start there, right? Both teams, the Texas teams at 5-1 to kind of set the stage for everybody, right? Both teams at 5-1 in conference. Craven, if you had to pick right now, and this is a national discussion, right? This isn't just the Texas teams. This is any team in the SEC. If you had to pick, who would be your bet to win the SEC and why?
I'll take Georgia. I think their defensive line, their ability to get after the passer, Carson Beck hasn't played that well, but I think his ceiling is up there with that offense. I just trust that coaching staff and that team to win. Alabama is another one, depending on how the tiebreakers roll. Because as you mentioned, Texas 5-1, A&M 5-1. One of those teams is going to lose, get to 2 losses. And then there's this logjam. There's Georgia at 6-2. They're done with their SEC slate. Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, also with 2 losses. So it may get weird and may get tricky with the tiebreakers, depending on what happens here in the next couple weeks.
I like the Georgia Bulldogs pick because they've played more ranked teams I've seen than Texas, Indiana, Penn State, Oregon, and Miami combined. So the schedule has been a gauntlet. I'm a big believer that you can't beat a great team twice. So I'm taking the coward's way out, and Georgia's my actual pick, but here's how I think this would work out. Texas will win if they play Georgia again.
Okay.
Texas wins the SEC. Georgia wins if they play Alabama again. Alabama wins if they play anyone else.
Interesting.
Because Georgia's beaten Alabama. Alabama's beaten Georgia.
Right.
Georgia has beaten Texas. So those results would flip-flop. Texas A&M will lose the SEC championship game no matter what, I believe. If they go into, they can either beat Texas and get in the SEC championship, I think they'll lose, or they can trip backwards, I believe, with a loss and a Georgia loss.
Yeah.
The tiebreakers are so weird. It's actually, my brain's melting trying to think of it all.
I have the tiebreakers in front of me if we want to read them here.
Go for it. Yeah, set the stage for that.
Okay, so number 1, and this is also true with the ACC when we get to that conversation. They're kind of the same exact tiebreaker rules. So number 1 is head-to-head competition amongst the teams. So if Tennessee and Texas are sitting there tied because Texas lost to A&M, obviously Georgia would go, that kind of thing, right? Number 2 is record versus all common conference opponents amongst those tied teams. Number 3 is record against the highest placed common conference opponent. Then number 4 is the cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents amongst tied teams. So it gets pretty convoluted because
it's like
not everybody's playing against each other, and so the number 1 head to head kind of goes out the window, and it just becomes record versus all common conference opponents. Then you got to dig into the schedules and who's all played each other. To me, this is a sign that the SEC really has to get to 9 conference games to get rid of this.
Lane Kiffin brought up a good point too, though, Craven, with all how convoluted it is. Do you want to be in the SEC championship game and lose that game?
That's a great
point. This is where it gets interesting for that conversation, because if you're Texas, you want to be in the conference championship game, because if you're 10-2 with losses to A&M and Georgia and your best win being Vanderbilt, you might get left out.
But the brand, though. The brand. Got to remember the brand in the eye test.
Yeah, but they're going up against other brands, right? The other brands they're going up against are Tennessee and Ole Miss and Alabama and Georgia. I mean, they're up against UTSA or something, right?
Also, don't forget that
if the SEC gets 4 or 5 teams in, Texas may be on the outside at 10-2.
I was going to say, don't forget that the Big Ten is more or less getting 4 teams in as well, right? So, like, they're guaranteeing their 4 teams, right? They're getting Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State, right? And so, like, they have those shored up, so there's no debate there, right? So it's the SEC fighting to keep their, for Texas to fight to get one of those last spots, because it's not a down year for the Big Ten, so there's not going to be a 5th slot or something for the SEC.
Can I ask a question?
Go for it.
If Indiana gets blasted by Ohio State, do they get in at 11-1?
No.
Well, because they're guaranteed a Big Ten championship because they play Purdue next week.
Yeah, they would get into.
So if they beat
Big Ten championship. Here's the thing. Here's.
But if they lose Big Ten championship,
they get in over Penn State.
If they win the Big Ten championship, yes. If not, no.
I think Indiana is guaranteed a Big Ten championship spot, even if they lose to Ohio State this weekend, because they'll beat Purdue next week.
College football playoff spot, though.
But I'm saying if they win and then if they go on to win the Big Ten championship, then yes.
Okay, I agree with that. But what if they lose Big Ten championship?
I think it comes. No, then they'll have. I think that's 2 losses and. Yeah. I think 2 losses. If one of them's Ohio State,
because that'd be 2 losses. Then no.
Then yeah, I don't think. I think that puts them in the discussion of a Texas and with 2 losses, and you look at their strength of schedule, and it's like, okay, it doesn't match.
They played like 7 of the 8 bottom teams of the Big Ten.
Yeah. To Craven's point, I don't think if they lose to Ohio State, even if they get blasted, but win the Big Ten, I think they're in. But if they lose both in no matter what fashion, I think they don't get out, because then
if they win the Big Ten, they're in guaranteed.
Yeah, right. And so, but I think that having the 2 losses puts them in the discussion now with teams that have probably a better resume. Because I think a lot of people look at the strength of schedule, but I think strength of record is probably the better indicator, right? Actually beating teams that, as the season goes along and gets evaluated, right? In retrospect, hey, how good were those teams? Mm-hmm. Oregon right now is the number 1. This is the top 5. Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Penn State, Texas. Into our strength of record, right? That is the team.
Wait, I thought Texas had a bad strength schedule.
Yeah,
That's what everyone wants to tell me.
That's what everyone wants to tell you now. But Indiana is 6. Right, so they're not playing bad teams necessarily, right? But of course, strength of schedule is evaluated a lot of the time by preseason, what we think these teams would be. Yeah. These teams actually end up being pretty solid for what they are. But again, what you're now doing is Texas and Indiana are 5 and 6 in strength of record. So now you're bringing Texas into that discussion versus Indiana. And now it's like, okay, yeah, you're probably going to leave them out because Texas has a little bit of a better track record.
The good news is this will all be fixed once we go to a 14-team playoff. None of this will be an issue.
Just 2 more, bro, please.
And then more issues will come up.
2 more slots.
And then we expand to 20.
Because here's my thought. Because the reason I bring that up is because I think there is a way that the SEC gets 5 teams. And if Indiana gets blasted by Ohio State, then Ohio State and Oregon is going to be the Big Ten championship game.
Sure.
And I just don't see how an Indiana 11-1 team gets in over, let's say a 10-2 Tennessee team with big wins. Because what's the best win for Indiana if they lose to Ohio State? Washington, Nebraska, Maryland, maybe.
Right.
And so if they have just been the way that they've been leaning on strength of schedule to exclude second place ACC, to exclude second place Big 12, makes me believe that 11-1 Indiana, because they don't have the helmet cachet that they need, may get left out for a 10-2 Alabama or a 10-2 Ole Miss or a 10-2 Texas.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see that as far-fetched.
So circle this back to specifically the SEC though, when you look at the issue with, and this is kind of an issue I have with, I guess, the SEC as a whole right now, is that I don't think anybody separated themselves in the pack because everybody has a glaring weakness, right? I think Georgia and Texas are very similar, actually, in terms of, I don't want to say glaring weakness, but probably their weakness, which is the ceiling of their quarterback play. I think Carson Beck has been more erratic than Quinn Ewers. I think he's at times hindered that offense, that from what I've seen, and they don't have as good of a running game as they had in the past. I think obviously Georgia's defense has been sensational and it's kept them in games, as we saw against Texas. But for me, I look at Georgia. I would pick Georgia to win the SEC if I had not seen, until last week, honestly, from what I've seen from Carson Beck. I have more faith right now in Quinn Ewers than I would in a Carson Beck against a top defense, because I have seen Quinn Ewers do it against good teams and against good defenses. I have not seen it this season from Carson Beck when teams know, they don't have Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey anymore. And
like you mentioned, Carson Beck will lose you a football game throwing 3 interceptions, except if he plays Texas, and then they'll still win.
I think the issue with Quinn Ewers, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I didn't want to. I think his ceiling this year has been like 7.5, right? Last year he showed in Tuscaloosa he can go to a 9. Right, but he hadn't shown that against Washington in the semifinal. You can go to a 9, but this year he hasn't hit that. Whether it's injury or whatever, I think he's been closer to 7 consistently than hitting that 9 mark. Carson Beck will give you a 4, right? And that's my issue right now, and that's why I picked Texas, in my opinion, as the team to beat in the SEC still, because they have that defense that I think is maybe, if not as good, up there with Georgia. Even Ole Miss. Ole Miss's front 7 is insane right now, but I like Texas's offense, and again, maybe that's a Steve Sarkisian thing, to get them through these rough patches that we've seen them have this season last week against Arkansas or whoever.
Here's the nightmare scenario, though: Texas A&M beats Texas.
Yeah,
and then there is an absolute, not already more of a logjam than there is right now.
Yeah.
And I'll let you in on a little secret. I kind of like A&M in that game right now. Not to look too far ahead, take care of business, don't spit the bit, yada, yada, yada. But if we want to look ahead as media members, I don't like Texas' offense versus A&M's defense at all.
Yeah.
Craven, what do you think?
And Texas would not get into the SEC championship game based on these tiebreakers because it's going to come down to record against highest placed common conference opponent and cumulative conference winning percentage. In Texas' SEC, just schedule isn't the same as Georgia's or Tennessee's or Alabama's in terms of who they played left. But Georgia probably has the toughest game left in the SEC. They play South Carolina. Yeah. At the very end, and South Carolina's peaking. That's a really good team. We saw what it did to A&M, and so I think it's safe to assume one of Texas A&M gets in there. They don't mess up this weekend, and then it comes down to probably Georgia, Alabama. Georgia if they beat South Carolina, Alabama if not. I think, it's just going to get weird, and the size of these conferences have created a headache of their own making.
I was going to say, so like you mentioned the schedule. I think there's the team that I think should be in the mix that I think they've taken too many bad losses or weird losses. I think Ole Miss is one of the 3 best teams in the SEC. And they've taken losses to Kentucky, and then of course the overtime loss to LSU. They pummeled Georgia, and they don't get Alabama, Texas, or Texas A&M on the schedule, right? So it goes into the frustration of like, well, how good is this team exactly? Because they made Carson Beck look awful, that front seven. I think that front seven might be the single best unit in the SEC, right?
I think they get in at 10-2.
You think they get in?
Because they have that Georgia win in their cap. Yeah, I think that they're fine if they're 10-2 and don't make the conference championship game.
I would much rather see them over Tennessee. Like, if Tennessee gets in, I'm going to be like, ew, gross. I don't want them in there.
Yeah, I'm curious about the tiebreakers on that one. But yeah, Tennessee does not. Their offense is not what we thought it would be. The defense is solid, but I think we kind of had this expectation of Tennessee being this vertical offense, and that's just not been that explosive.
Which, as Craven mentioned, if Ole Miss gets in, like this 12-team playoff was created for Ole Miss and Penn State.
Oh yeah,
like it is the Penn State and Ole Miss Invitational.
It sure is.
Oh, 100%. And Tennessee at this rate too. Tennessee, they've looked mid, but they were 7th in the last poll. They may be, maybe around the same spot.
Are we also forgetting about Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz?
No,
they're out now. They're out. We're done with that.
That's completely
done. No, I'm just kidding. They're
out. They're out now. We're done with that. We're done with that night. That speaking of nightmare scenario, that'd have been the real nightmare scenario. Missouri stumbled their way.
Brady Cook getting back from the hospital, being like, "We're still in this shot for the 12 seed."
Thank you, South Carolina.
Worst case for us is A&M loses to Auburn and then beats Texas,
which is not,
because then they both be eliminated,
which I could see happening.
Because of course Hugh Freeze, of course I don't think he's that great of a coach, but he's known to generate these one-off games. Like, I'm just hoping he's saving it for the Iron Bowl. And
we'll get to it, but A&M Auburn's only a 2.5-point dog in that game, so Vegas knows something.
Yeah,
it's scary. It's a scary line.
We'll talk about that, and we'll put a bow on our SC discussion and get to another conference. But I'll save it for there. Let's go to the ACC. All right, we have one team obviously in the conference, one team also in the driver's seat in Miami, in SMU with Miami. What are we thinking here? Are we calling our shot with those two teams? Obviously, Clemson's still there as well.
This one's much easier for my dumb brain to figure out. It's just one. It's one.
It's easier to think about.
It's like win your conference, you're in. Yeah. You want to do some blind resume?
Go for it.
Right now?
Go for it.
Here's Team A, 9-1 record, 14.1 FBS differential, 0.532 opponent combined win percentage, and Team B is also 9-1, 19.1 FBS point differential. So they're winning games by 5 more points.
Yes.
But their opponent win percentage is 0.477. Okay, so that's Team A.
Winning record versus losing record.
Winning record versus losing record.
Yeah.
Team A's best win is versus the Big 12 leader. Team A's worst loss.
Their only loss
is Big 12 BYU leader. Mm-hmm. Team B is 6-4 Georgia Tech. That's who they lost to. Who's ranked higher, I wonder?
Yeah. I mean, I know it's Miami that's ranked higher.
Because they can use the eye test instead of you can go flip-flop between resume and eye test, whichever one you want to do.
All right, we'll call it right now. Who's winning the ACC?
SMU.
You think SMU's winning the ACC?
Yes.
I agree. Craven?
I want to pick Clemson.
Oh, do it.
Let's cause some chaos.
I mean, they need some help.
Yeah.
Miami finishes with Wake and at Syracuse. If Miami loses one of those, then Clemson would back their way in because Clemson's done with the ACC schedule. They got Citadel this weekend, and then they play that interstate, against South Carolina to finish out the year. And so, I think if Clemson was to get there, I think Clemson is the best team. Mm-hmm. But if it's SMU Miami, I think I'm leaning SMU too. I can't believe I'm saying that based on. I mean, Mallory was with me when I was in Vegas. I put a decent amount of money on Miami having a pretty good year, but I just think Miami just shoots themselves in the foot too much, and SMU seems like the type of defense that can take advantage of that if Cam Ward can't make big plays. So give me the Mustangs.
So what if Clemson gets there and they win?
Well, the amount of times...
are they in?
Clemson wins it.
The amount of times...
if they win the ACC championship, they're in. Because we've got to remember, the highest-ranked 5 conference championships are guaranteed in.
Mm-hmm.
And so unless we think a second G5 champion is ranked above the Big 12 champion or the ACC champion, it doesn't matter who wins it. They are going to be in for sure. So if Clemson wins the ACC championship, not only are they in, they probably get a bye.
That would be very fitting for the amount of times people have tried to write off Cade Klubnik for bust. For him to win the ACC, come back from the dead.
Just quietly win the ACC.
Is this a safe space?
What's up?
Yeah, you're the trust tree.
Safe space? I got a lot of heat back in my recruiting days for thinking Cade Klubnik was the best quarterback of that trio. The Connor Wegman, Quinn Ewers, Cade Klubnik triumphed. They were supposed to be in the same class. Quinn Ewers reclassified, so it didn't end up mattering. But I was on a platform of saying Cade Klubnik was the best quarterback in that group, and I don't think I'm completely wrong right now.
I mean, let's be honest. No. He's the only. I don't think he's in the finalist discussion, but he's by far the highest of the Heisman hopefuls of those, right? Like Quinn Ewers was out of that discussion, obviously because of the injury, but like his play as well. Until I'd say about last week or a couple weeks ago, Klubnik was a dark horse in that discussion. So yeah, no, I'd say you're validated on that for at least the production of this season for sure.
It kind of is how their high school careers were, where Quinn Ewers started off way hotter and Cade Klubnik just rose so quickly and fast as he became like into the later years of high school. Okay, so we agree Clemson's very scary. Let's just picture Miami and SMU in the ACC championship game. Here's a crazy thing I was thinking about. Which coach do you trust more? I think Rhett Lashley.
People, you should know my thoughts on Mario Cristobal. So.
And Mario Cristobal has not had a doy Cristobal moment really yet, so he's due.
He is due for one. But Cam Ward has bailed him out of it, and I think that goes to Craven's point. This is a Miami team that should not have one loss. This is a team that should be
undefeated.
Should have no. I was going to say should have more losses.
Oh, really?
Cam Ward has pulled this team out of something. And granted, some of those are his mistakes too, right? He hasn't played the cleanest this season, but I think that if you look on paper, and I think this is where Craven was smart with his bet for Miami. If you look on paper, there's almost no flaws with this Miami team, right? On paper, you look at they have a quarterback now, they have an incredible defense, they have skill position, they have an offensive line, which is Cristobal's calling card. And you look and you're like, why are they almost losing this game, right? Almost every week they've been trying to lose a game. Then finally Georgia Tech was able to beat them. I look at SMU and I look at them and I'm like, I don't see as many glaring flaws or them trying to lose. Like, even when they try to lose a game to Duke, right? They come out.
They tried their damnedest.
They tried their damnedest and they still didn't, right? And I don't know. I just feel like you put Cam Ward in a situation where he has to go up against an SMU defense and make every throw and then not make mistakes. I think he's going to make one or two. I think he's just that type of quarterback. He's that gunslinger where he's just going to he's going to make the no, yes type of throw. I just feel I hate that kind of gamble against SMU, who's played so crisp all season, in my opinion. So that's why I would go with SMU in particular if those two teams match up.
And the SMU-Miami matchup is so fascinating because of all the ties on the SMU roster to Miami.
And Rhett, of course,
not only the head coach and Rhett Lashley, but Elijah Roberts, Brashard Smith. I mean, a lot of the guys that we know of. Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's I think 9 or 10 former Miami players on the roster.
Yeah, and so that's why I would. This one's going to be very fun to watch because, obviously we didn't think SMU would be here, and I think that
I sure didn't.
No, say more on that again. But
no comment.
But I'm looking at Miami's, and this is why, right? I'm looking at Miami's. I was trying to find their resume. Beat Virginia Tech by 4, Cal by 1, Louisville by a touchdown, which of course SMU similarly, and then of course they lose to Georgia Tech. So like I just think they've had so many games where Cam Ward's had to pull out the Superman moment, and he's done that until last week. So anyway, that's just why I think about SMU. All right, let's go to our last conference of the discussion. Conference USA, another team that I don't know if we had them in this discussion at the beginning of the year. Sam Houston sitting at 5-1, massive game against Jacksonville State this weekend. Who do you got winning Conference USA? Of course, Western Kentucky still there in the mix as well. Liberty on the outside looking in.
Before we pick the winner, it's all going to be decided on the field,
yes.
which is one of the few conferences you can say this about.
Yes. Oh, yeah, by the way, that was another thing. ACC, fix your scheduling, because why are all these contenders not – we have like three contenders, and none of them play each other.
It's ridiculous.
Anyway, go ahead.
Jacksonville State undefeated at the top.
Yes.
Sam Houston and West Kentucky have one loss each, but WKU has the tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. Liberty is trailing with 2 losses, but they're lurking.
Yes.
Sam Houston and West Kentucky both play Jacksonville State and Liberty. Liberty and Jacksonville State have played each other already. Jacksonville State holds the tiebreaker. So all these teams are going to play each other in the last 2 weeks of the season. It's going to be insane.
That's going to be awesome. Who are you picking?
I am going to have to go with Jacksonville State. I think because, I want in my heart of hearts to pick Sam Houston, but the offense terrifies me. I think Hunter Watson is like... He is Monty Python with his arms and legs cut off right now from running so much. I mean, he's so injured.
Yes.
And the offense has just been at a standstill.
He's still their best option at quarterback.
And Jacksonville State has a rushing attack better than Sam Houston's. Their quarterback, I was looking at it today, Tyler Huff has 902 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 yards carry. Their running back, over 1,200 yards and 19 touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. So that rushing attack versus Sam Houston's defense, it's going to be heavyweight bout.
Yeah. Craven, what about you?
Yeah, I think Jackson State's probably the favorite. I like Western Kentucky a lot. Mm-hmm. I was there when they beat Sam Houston and kind of took over in that second half when Hunter Watson didn't play. I'm with Carter. It feels like a 2-team race with Sam Houston kind of being right outside just because that offense, I just don't know if they can score enough points. Yeah. I think over the last 3 weeks, they've scored like a total of 40 points and they're 3-0. Yeah. Like they're just winning these very small margin defensive games, and you would just think that would run out against the better teams in the conference that can score over 20.
I wonder, my nightmare scenario is Liberty just turns it on and beats Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State and gets in somehow. And then the dominoes fall correctly.
Well, they play Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. They've lost to Jacksonville State.
That's right. Yes, you are correct. Sorry. Yes. So,
but the scenario could still hold.
Right. I think it's Western Kentucky that plays both Jacksonville and Liberty coming up. So that's my nightmare scenario. I would pick Jacksonville State right now because of, I think I'm with you guys. I love what they figured out on offense, right? Mm-hmm. It's efficient. It does what it does.
They started 0-3 this year. They're on a huge win streak.
Yeah. And so, like, for me, Sam Houston, I think it's a great feel-good story, but I don't think this offense is sustainable to a conference championship, right? I think that they're able to do, especially, and this is why this game against Jacksonville State is going to be so interesting. What happens when they play an offense that can get 1 or 2 past that defense, right? When they're playing catch-up. Now, granted, they did that against Texas State, right? That was a team that got on the front foot. Hunter Watson had a fumble that resulted in a touchdown. They went down big.
That was before Hunter Watson was on 20 HP.
True. And also, I think that game says a lot about Texas State as well, who's built up big leads and then given up, let teams come back into certain games. So I think that was a little bit of column A, column B thing. But we have seen them do that, but to your point, it was with a healthier Hunter Watson. It's also not a way. It's also not a way that I would like to. Obviously, not a way you would like to play the game. It was like, what happens if an offense beats us blah 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 over the top a couple times? I don't know. I think for me, I wouldn't be shocked if they beat Jacksonville State because I think their offense plays into a little bit of Skylar Cassidy's defense. It's a very run-oriented offense, but I just worry about them consistently playing against these top teams now. What happens if 1 or 2 that are definitely more talented on offense gets past the defense and injured Hunter Watson has to make a couple throws that he probably can't right now?
Yeah, Jack State scored over 30 points in each of their last 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Over 27 every single game other than that Louisville game. So, while it is a ground attack, it's that rich rod offense where it just busts big plays, and all of a sudden you look up, it doesn't feel like you've given up a lot, and you're down 28-7. And it's the third or fourth quarter. So I like Jack State a lot. They're a little one-dimensional at times, but that one dimension works really well.
This is a question that I'm just curious about that I want to hear y'all's thoughts on before we move on from this. Is there a scenario that y'all can think of that the Big 12 champion gets left out?
No. We talked about this on the Sunday recap. Me and Craven did. It's written in the bylaws that the Big 12 champion
Can't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it would require 2 G5 champions to be ranked higher than the Big 12 champion.
Right.
And that's just
So
not the case, right?
Boise State and, say, Tulane would have to be ranked high because the five conference champions that are ranked the highest are automatically in. We all just assume the 4 major conferences get that because it's just unlikely that 2 G5 teams are ranked above.
And strength of schedule plays in there a lot too. Yeah.
Well, it's the only scenario, and I don't say one. I think they set themselves up with where they're ranking Boise, how they're going to classify the G5. Right, they're literally the
eye test.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the wild card, and I just don't know how to interpret them, is Wazoo. Wazoo's 18 right now, but you can't classify that. They're obviously not a Power 5.
That's a good point.
But they're one spot behind Colorado. This is last week, so obviously BYU's in the ranking as well. But it's okay, if BYU stumbles, does Wazoo jump at all? I don't think so. But that's the only wild card I can see. Because do you classify them as a G5, even though there's no conference championship game?
That's a good point.
They're playing their only conference game against Oregon State this week, though.
They are. That's true. Yeah, 1-0 in conference.
Yeah, I know.
But it's a very interesting. That's the only wild card because I don't think Army's at 24 right now. Craven mentioned Tulane. Tulane's at 25, so I don't think they're jumping. Colorado's at 17. I don't think they're jumping up to the top 17 or 18. Wazoo's one spot behind, but I don't think there's a reason to move them up past a Big 12 champion as opposed to just keeping BYU and Colorado or whoever plays for that.
I want Army to beat Notre Dame so bad. That's
Listen,
that would
scenario.
rock.
That'd be an amazing scenario because that make this a discussion. Make this okay, they beat a top 10 team. Do you vault them ahead of Kansas State, Colorado? I don't know. I think that would also set the discourse on fire.
Also, isn't the committee just kind of against independence anyways?
Except Notre Dame.
Well, no,
right, I guess.
No,
that's true. Just the concept of being independent. I know there's
Notre
a lot
Dame
of
losing
people.
would help the loser of the ACC championship more than anybody, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would open up a secondary spot for a Miami and SMU, maybe even a Clemson to backdoor their way into that.
Right. Because
I think it's important to remember this is a television product, and if it's a Washington State, Colorado up in the air coin toss, behind the scenes, the Deion Sanders factor will get them in. They will be ranked above Washington State.
Yeah. I was going to say, Craven, to your point about the ACC, I think Notre Dame. We'll wrap up this discussion here, but I think the Notre Dame point is a good one because me and you talked about this a little bit on our Slack, where it's Notre Dame does basically just have an ACC resume. As far as SMU and Miami, all 3 of their best wins right now are Louisville, right? I think you could probably A&M as well for Notre Dame, but that's the tiebreaker, right? Right now, that's what's putting them ahead of Miami and SMU is because they all have the common opponent in Louisville, but then also Notre Dame has that one notch better. And so an Army loss would definitely bring them a little bit more back to the pack of that with obviously 2 losses. And then all of a sudden you're comparing common opponents.
Well, ACC resume, but also their former AD Jack Swarbrick made this tournament.
Yes.
So that
100%.
helps a lot.
Yes, that does play a big factor. So again, like Carter mentioned at the beginning, this is win now season. So that's why we decided to have a little bit of a discussion on this. Some of the conference races. What were you going to say, Craven?
Oh, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say that.
It's going to be settled on the field unless it's not. Then it'll be settled in the committee room in great fun.
We can put a cap on it here. You may realize we didn't talk about the Big 12. It's because, they kind of played themselves out of it.
So too much parody.
At least the driver's seat, they've played themselves out of it.
Y'all wanted parody. I don't know what you mean.
Too much.
If Baylor
You could have seen all this coming.
If Baylor just covers a damn Hail Mary.
Oh, my God.
If Baylor just covers the Hail Mary, we're having a completely different discussion here. We are having Colorado's not in the discussion. Baylor's in the discussion. But, of course, Victory Cigar let us down. They started smoking the cigar before they covered the ball. So, anyway, that'll be that. So we'll keep an eye on the Big 12 if any last-minute Hail Marys come our way to help a team vault into the championship, but doesn't look like it. All right, Mallory, let's round out the games and finally get to our game discussions.
Well, we're going to do Josh Cameron
That's
first.
right. We do have an interview with Josh Cameron. Speaking of Baylor,
And on that note,
Good transition.
and on that note, one of the bright spots, I will say, let's transition that nicer. One of the brighter spots of Baylor this season has been the emergence of skill position players like Josh Cameron, who Craven and Carter sat with. Here's our interview with the former walk-on, now scholarship go-to player, Josh Cameron.
hello and welcome in to our very special interview with Baylor wide receiver Josh Cameron, or should I say Burlsworth Trophy nominee Josh Cameron for top walk-on, who began his career as a walk-on in college football. Josh is leading Baylor right now in receiving yards, touchdowns, receptions, everything you can name as a wide receiver. Josh, what does that nomination for the Burlsworth Trophy mean to you?
Oh man, where do I even begin? No, it means a whole lot. Honestly, really just what the whole kind of foundation and the award just kind of stands for. Just the impact that Brandon Burlsworth had on really just the view of walk-ons in general. I mean, to be up for this nomination, I mean, it means the world. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I'm representing kind of all the walk-ons around the nation who kind of tend to get overlooked just because they have that title as walk-ons. So I think it just truly just means the world to me.
Yeah, what do you want like high school recruits that know your story? What message should they get about your story?
Oh yeah. So really just talking about my story in general, going back to high school, junior year and really senior year, I had kind of like 1,100 plus yards, 15 plus touchdowns, things like that. But my recruiting was honestly just like there wasn't much recruiting, if I'm being honest. But it was just kind of I was overlooked. I don't really know the reason why, but at the end of the day, that's still a part of my story. And I think I really just want to send a message that patience is just the number one thing kind of through it all. I think that's something that God has kind of taught me through this whole journey from my from high school all the way to where I'm at now. That you know what I'm saying, as long as you just keep grinding away, that you'll soon one day get there. And just never lose hope, never lose faith, and just remember who you are. Because at the end of the day, if you know who you are, then you know what you can do, basically.
Did you always kind of have that patience, like you knew it would work out, or was it ever frustrating for you? Because I mean, you're at Cedar Park, which is like a perennial power. You're putting up numbers. Like, did it ever get frustrating for you?
I would say maybe at times it was a little frustrating. Kind of, I had talks with my mom and kind of parents. I'm just kind of like, I don't really understand like what's going on recruiting wise. So we were kind of all kind of stumped, and as a family, we were all kind of frustrated at times. But I think at the end of the day, just going back to that thing of patience and just kind of like my whole life of being overlooked, I guess you could say. So it wasn't like a huge thing because I was just a little bit used to it. And yeah, I just think just patience is the best thing for that, honestly.
What went into the decision to walk on at Baylor? Because you had FCS offers, but you chose to kind of bet on yourself, take a preferred walk on. Like, what went into that?
Yeah, so really going back to when I was 5 years old when I first started playing football. Actually, it's a funny story. When I first started playing football, I was actually an offensive lineman. I'd say like right guard or something like that. And then going into when I turned 6, going to that next year, that's when I transitioned to running back. And then when I got towards like high school, that's kind of when I made transition to wide receiver. But really just going to the decision itself, I always knew like ever since I was young, I wanted to play football at the highest level possible. Yeah, really just at the highest level possible, that being D1 level or D1 FBS. And so I kind of had a connection with Baylor from my brother. He went here. He didn't play sports and anything, but he graduated from here. So I already knew Baylor was just a awesome, great school. And then something that really sold me that was like I had a conversation with Coach Aranda, the head coach. And so I thought that was something just so interesting that I was just like a preferred walk-on, but I'm talking to the head coach of Baylor football. I'm like, wow, this is really different because a lot of times walk-ons tend to just get overlooked, and then you find out who the head coach is when you get there, kind of deal. So I think that was just something real special, and just seeing like different past guys like McVay, Braden Utley, other guys like that who were walk-ons and then earned a scholarship. I feel like Baylor's just truly a different place where I can be respected, and I actually get a chance to do my thing. So that was kind of the decision. And I told my parents, like, you know what I'm saying, I think I'm gonna go to Baylor. I think I'm gonna bet on myself, and then yeah, y'all will have to pay for school for a little bit, but I promise you that I will get that scholarship. So yeah, that's kind of what ended up happening. So it's definitely awesome though.
So you were a former running back. Is that why you wear number 34?
Yeah, so let's see. Let's see, eighth grade, that's when I was running back, and then going to high school, yeah, I just decided to be a little bit different. I was like, I've always been just a little bit different. Always wanted to be kind of like my own self, something unique. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna keep the 34 number. I've been always been a big Bo Jackson fan. Like the way he plays. So I was always like, man, I'm just gonna be a bigger receiver, wear number 34, and just do something different. So that's kind of the whole 34 number, if I'm being honest.
So let me preface this by this is going to be the dumbest question you've ever been asked. But do you think wearing 34 as a wide receiver might have been the reason you didn't get recruited as much?
I don't think that played a part in it, if I'm being honest. Like I said, I love the number 34. And I think it just when you see 34 as a wide receiver, like what that's interesting. So I think just kind of playing off of that, just being just unique and just different is the biggest thing, honestly.
And so college football is changing so much, right? Like there might take away scholarship limits at the major college programs like Baylor, cap the roster at 105. So like the walk on in the future, like people don't know what's going to happen to it or if it's still going to be
Yeah.
there. Like in your opinion, why are walk-ons important?
Um, Kind of like I was saying before, walk-ons tend to get overlooked. They're just a whole bunch of different guys who have just different stories and just different things coming from a whole bunch of different places. So I think walk-ons are just kind of like the heart and just like the center of the team at times. You know what I'm saying? They're just doing tasks that no other player wants to do and that some scholarship players don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? Walk-ons tend to get thrown into that role. But at the end of the day, a lot of walk-ons, we don't complain. We go grind every day, no complaining. You know what I'm saying? We're really the heart and center of the team at times, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's the heart and center of the team. And Dave Aranda had talked earlier this year about how a turning point in y'all's season was before the Texas Tech game in practice where you like threw your helmet down, you started freaking out on the guys and giving them like motivational words, right? He said it could be a Disney movie if not for all the S and F bombs out there. But like give me the PG rated version of your message to the guys and like why you felt the need to step up in that moment.
Yeah, so let's see. I think that was like a Tuesday practice. Yeah, so it was like a Tuesday practice, and I just wasn't really liking how the practice was going. Just kind of the way people were just going about things. Like, we just came off the loss to Iowa State, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I just didn't like how practice was going, just the energy, just the way people were going about it. So I just had to like get my message across. And I guess it had to be that way just so
So
people can hear me. But I just had to get my message across, like, guys, like, we're a good team. We have to pick it up. And like the way that what we're doing now is basically isn't going to cut it if we want to get to the places that we want to get to into the future, basically.
we're recording this interview before the West Virginia game, but before this West Virginia game, y'all have been, I think, undefeated since that moment in practice. Like, what
Mhm.
have you seen a difference in the team since then?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say I see a difference. I think guys, especially coming off that bye week, guys got good rest and the energy leading up into this West Virginia game has just been awesome. Guys have just been flying around, competing at rate that, you know what I'm saying, has just been really ever since that moment has just been stacking and stacking and stacking. So I think guys just know what we're capable of as a team and kind of see that, and then we're just kind of feeding off of each other's energy and just kind of propelling forward, just so that we can just keep on stacking, keep on winning. Because that's at the end of the day, as long as we win, everybody's happy.
How much fun is it playing in this offense this year? I mean, it's fun as hell to watch. Like, it must be, is it fun to play wide receiver in it?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I was going to say it's your stereotypical spread offense. You know what I'm saying? You get to throw the ball like 40, 50 times a game. It's honestly a wide receiver's dream, if I'm being honest. So being able to be a part of it is just super cool. And then just having Coach Spav and then Sawyer just trust me. Honestly, that's just the next biggest thing. So as long as they trust me, you know what I'm saying, I'll just do my best to make the plays and just go out there and have fun at the end of the day.
I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast. Like Sawyer Robertson's probably the most surprising player in Texas. I mean, he's been lights out this year. What have you noticed a change in him, like attitude wise or just play wise, or like what's gone into this year for him?
Yeah, I would say the main thing would be his confidence. Yeah, just the way the way he walks around, I guess you could say. You can just see his chest is high, his head is forward. He just walks and just plays with a whole different confidence when he's out on that field. I think that's honestly one of the biggest factors when playing this game. If you're confident, then basically almost no one can stop anybody, honestly. So I think his confidence has just been taking a completely different step, and it's honestly fun to watch. You know what I'm saying? Just seeing his journey, because he always works hard no matter what, and he's always just been a great team guy, team first guy. So just seeing his hard work and just kind of patience pay off it's honestly really cool.
Coach Aranda's talked about he's like the most competitive guy too. Like I think y'all had a ping pong table or something in the facility, and he like tries to run the ping pong table. Like, have you beaten him in ping pong, or who's getting the best of each other there?
You know, I played him a couple times, and it was back and forth. But I think in the end he did get me. I was pretty disappointed about that. He does have a nice ping pong game. You know what I'm saying? But he's an ultra competitor. Honestly, Coach Aranda said it to a T. Honestly, he's one of, if not the most competitive guy on this team. He makes a little mistake, he's hard on himself, but I know that hardness that he puts on himself, he's gonna correct it in the end. So,
what was it like when the fans rushed the field after the TCU game? Like, what was that moment like for you?
Yeah, it honestly, I was kind of surprised because I was just kind of celebrating with my teammates, and then I was about to go walk over to like do the little handshake thing, and then like as I was like just celebrating, looking around at everybody expression after we beat TCU, I just see a whole bunch of people just run up, and then it was just all crowded and stuff and crazy. I was like, oh snap! And just had a whole bunch of people like say, hey, can I take a photo, things like that. So it was honestly a cool experience. It definitely caught me off guard, but no, it was awesome though, for sure.
But Coach Aranda had said earlier this year, like, you know, we got to win some games so we're cool enough to hang out with, you know, like, do you think I feel like that's the moment y'all are definitely cool enough to hang out with now. They're rushing the field, right?
No, for sure. I feel like the whole kind of atmosphere and momentum just took a completely different turn after that game. I feel like the fans have really, you know what I'm saying, bought back into what we're doing here, and just the belief just all around from the fans, the teams, just really everybody has just been through the roof, honestly.
Yep. All right, that's Baylor wide receiver Josh Cameron. Hey, Josh, real quick before we go, what's your prediction for Cedar Park this year in the playoffs?
You know what I'm saying? I think they're going to handle business. There's some great guys on offense, great guys on defense. I think they can go all the way. I think they can do everything, handle business, and just, you know what I'm saying, take it to state.
Take it to state, baby, just like Josh Cameron did his senior year there. They got to live up to that legacy.
Sir.
All right, Josh.
Yes,
hey, thank you for joining, man. Appreciate this.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Appreciate Josh Cameron for joining us. Really good talk, but I have one gripe. Told you while it was going on. Next time you see a Hunter x Hunter anime poster in the background, you better call me in the room so I can ask questions about.
Yeah, I was out of my depth on that one. I didn't know what that was a reference to.
Also, his headset, that's definitely a gamer.
Oh, for sure.
I saw
I was going to put that in the Slack.
I was like, this dude is a gamer right now, and a Hunter x Hunter poster in the background. I was like, oh, this guy's right up my alley. So.
And he wears number 34 as wide receiver. Yeah. This guy's awesome.
Yeah, he has no fear. All right, Mallory, what do we got for this week's slate of games?
We'll start off with Baylor because we just talked about them. Baylor playing at Houston this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on FS1. Baylor 8.5-point favorites. Over under 50.5.
I think I'm done with the Houston Magic.
I think I am too.
Ready to put it away for the season.
Last week was ugly.
Just stash it away for next year, right? Take that little bit of hope, right, and just kind of put it away. And you know, Willie Fritz still nursing a broken finger, so like the grit's not quite as gritty anymore. He got a little bit of the consequences of that. But I think we've seen enough to be promised that they're going to be fine. But this year, this week,
Successful year.
Yeah,
but we're done probably with this.
I think I'm a little done. I think I'm a little
for 2024.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I think Baylor wins, but the defense Baylor has given up 28 points in 7 straight games. Dave Aranda said this about it. Got a new baby. It's an ugly baby. Gotta love it nonetheless. So still working on his first year as defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
If you give up 28 points to Houston, like, buddy, I don't know what's going on here.
Dave Aranda have kids?
Yes. Yeah, his son's a freshman at Waco Midway.
Is he calling his baby? Is he calling his son ugly when he was?
No, he's calling his defensive ugly right now.
Okay.
Not his son.
Yeah, Houston hadn't scored over 28 since October 4th at TCU. So I think Baylor's safe here, even if the offense struggles. They're going to struggle to score 30. Not struggle to score 15 or 16. That'll be what it takes for Houston to win. I think Houston's got a better chance against BYU. It's those type of teams, the Utahs, the Kansas States, the BYUs of the world. This Houston team matches up better against that style than the Kansases, the Arizonas, the Baylors of the world.
Yep. One quick thing on Baylor. We should do like a best players in Texas who didn't begin the season as starters. I think it's Kevin Jennings at SMU, but it's also Sawyer Robertson and Bryson Washington. Like, they've got 2 of the best guys who weren't starters at the beginning of the year.
We may have a award-winning list at the end of the year that could reflect that as well. So we'll see. A little bit of a hint towards maybe what we're discussing right now for all Texas. Mallory,
I love that. Okay, now we'll kind of go in order here of times. So UTSA hosting Temple this Friday, November 22nd at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN2. UTSA, 16.5-point favorites, over under 55.5. Now this completes the
the Owl Gauntlet.
The Owl Gauntlet that UTSA has gone through, and all coaches have been fired that have the Owls as their mascot.
Yeah, Stan Drayton got fired. I don't know who the interim is.
Everett Withers.
Is it Everett Withers? Mm-hmm. Yo!
No way!
Former Texas State, right?
Yeah. Oh man, that rocks.
Does that give him the
by
brings
21?
You back?
I was about to say, does that give the interim coach bump?
No. Did you see those games they played against UTSA when he was head coach?
I don't think Stan Drayton's showing up in the pregame stadium walk like Brian Bohannon did for the UTSA game. Jeff Traylor's 28-3 in the Alamo Dome. Never lost in November at home. Give me the Roadrunners to get bowl eligible here.
Yep, same.
Yeah, too bad Jeff Traylor wasn't coaching at the Alamo. That may have gone different for the state of Texas. He's really good at home. I like to imagine Everett Withers getting the call that he's the interim head coach, looking at the schedule and going, God, again? So the Roadrunners get to do a thing they like to do, and that's beat Everett Withers.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Okay, number 22, SMU playing at Virginia this Saturday, November 23rd at 11 a.m. You can watch it on ESPN2. SMU, 9.5-point favorites. The over-under is 57.5.
Yeah, I think the train keeps rolling for SMU. I think the ACC, again, we talked about it, not the best conference. Virginia had a little flirting with being pretty good this season. I think they've come back to earth.
That was before Anthony Calandria threw 7 interceptions in the last 3 games.
Yeah, it's
their
a good
QB.
Point. AKA, that was before they played any good team.
Or that.
All their losses are Louisville, Clemson, North Carolina, which, whatever. They got blasted by North Carolina. And then Notre Dame. So they've lost to almost every good team they've played. They beat Pitt. I think they'll lose to SMU very comfortably. So,
all right, moving on here. Sam Houston playing at Jacksonville State. We've already mentioned this game once. Saturday at 11 a.m. You can watch it on CBS SN. Jacksonville State coming in as 6-point favorites. The over-under is 55.5.
I will say I am very mad that this is not our midweek game. This should have the
it has midweek written all over
spotlight all over it. It should be on ESPN2. This is a massive game. I'm surprised Conference USA didn't try to get that as more of a spotlight.
Man, I got a hole in my heart, and it's left by Conference USA Wednesday right now. I'm missing it.
Don't worry, Central Michigan will fill that for you.
No, it won't.
No, it will not. I think this one's going to be a little bit too much for Sam Houston.
Me too.
I do think this offense plays into what Skylar Cassidy is good at on defense, which is playing, bottling up kind of the middle. But I do think that it's just going to be maybe 1 or 2 big plays too many for Sam Houston. Craven, what do you think?
Take the under.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, moving on. UTEP playing at number 7 Tennessee this Saturday. No, that's not Middle Tennessee. That's the Vols of Tennessee.
And they're mad after the Georgia game.
This Saturday at noon, you can watch it on, they're not even putting on it really anything, ESPN Plus or SEC Network Plus. Tennessee, anyone want to take a guess at what the line is at?
46.
42. Very close.
That was not a bad guess.
Over under 52.5. Another nightmare scenario. UTEP goes in there and beats Tennessee.
Yeah, that'll throw
for the
them.
playoff.
Actually, it wouldn't even matter because it's non-con.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That would rock, though.
Actually, they definitely aren't getting the college football playoff if UTEP pulls this off.
Yeah, no.
Don't get hurt. Is my only analysis.
So the line, as Mallory said, is minus 42. The over and under is 52.5. That means the implied score here on Vegas is 49-3 Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Honestly, that's pretty nailed on. I'd probably go with that. Honestly, no, I'd probably go like 42. Tennessee's offense has not been that great, so I'll probably go with like 42-3. But yeah, come out healthy is all I want.
Yeah. All right, Rice playing at UAB this Saturday at 1 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. Rice 6.5-point favorites. The over/under is 51.5.
4 American Athletic Conference coaches have been fired mid-season. One of them is not Trent Dilfer.
It may be 5 if they lose this game.
Yeah.
I was about to say,
Dilfer.
You want to see what game gets him fired? It's losing to Rice and possibly Charlotte, who'd also fired their head coach.
They're 6-16 right now. The Blazers are.
Yeah, they were Memphis's flex game where they just decided to stretch all the muscles out. 53-18 last week. Give me Rice, man. They've been fighting. Give me Rice. I think they can do it against a team that's trying desperately to get their head coach fired in UAB.
I like that too. Let's go Pete Alomar.
Let's go.
Craven, do you have a thought on that?
They're going to have the best player on the field. I mean, Dean Connor should have a field day here. UAB wants this season. It's like the NBA playoffs. It's like the going fishing thing, right? When everybody's playing on vacation. Like UAB wants this thing to be over. Rice can send them into a sweet good night.
Yes.
Arizona playing at TCU this Saturday at 2 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN Plus. TCU 12-point favorites. The over/under is 58.5.
Is TCU the weirdest team right now in the state?
Pretty weird.
Like weirdest.
They are odd.
Like I probably would pick them. I'm gonna pick them to win this game. It would not shock me if they lost it, just because Arizona does one thing well, but TCU's lost to teams that have done like one thing well. Mm-hmm. Of course, they dominated Houston last week, which was kind of unexpected for me. I'm going to take TCU, but I don't know what to think about this team right now.
The thought I have on TCU is, are we not talking about Savion Williams as a first-round NFL draft pick enough?
I think, for better or worse, I think Quentin Johnston scared teams off of that maybe.
But he's doing better now.
I do think that you're right in Savion Williams, but I do think big wide receiver from TCU who they're gearing the whole offense around. I don't know if I want to take it
But
first.
Quentin Johnson didn't play a Wildcat quarterback.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
I think Savion's going to be one of those guys that shoots up boards when they get him into combines and things like that, just because he's an absolute freak of nature.
Yeah.
The consistency has come around, and so I think he's going to be one of those high upside second or third round, offensive players. Arizona doesn't worry me as much against TCU. I'm more worried about the Cincinnati matchup a week later, just because this team does well against teams that look like them.
Sure.
And Arizona plays football pretty similarly to how TCU does. It's not a physical bunch that's just going to beat you up front, and that's what the Horned Frogs have struggled against the most this year.
Right. What's next, Mallory?
Number 3, Texas, hosting Kentucky this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ABC. Texas, 20.5-point favorites. The over/under is 47.5.
I think they're okay. Kentucky hasn't been great this year. I think, are they over? No, they have 2. They have 1 win in the SEC.
Versus Ole Miss.
Yeah, God.
And they lost by 1 point to Georgia.
That Ole Miss team. I think Texas takes care of business, but I think it looks similarly to last week, where they probably get out to a big lead, and then all of a sudden they just kind of hang around.
Where it's a win and no one's happy?
No one's happy, but also no one's really that afraid of Kentucky coming back into the game. So I think it's similar to last week. I think that's just what this Texas team is going to be against teams that are, quote-unquote, they should be, quote-unquote, better than.
Texas needs a feel-good win before A&M, like a positive offensive vibes momentum game.
They need something like what happened against Florida. Like they need another Florida type win, which I don't know if they're going to get. But yeah.
Craven, is this the game you're going to this week?
I think I'm going to just stay at home, watch them from home. I do have a press pass. I should probably let Texas know if I'm going or not. This Kentucky team's kind of a weird one, right? They've beaten Ole Miss. They almost beat Georgia. They lose by 14 at home to Auburn. You just like can't get a feel for what it is. We were really close to seeing Mark Stoops versus Steve Sarkisian a week later, November 30th. And it does seem like this Kentucky team's been up and down following that kind of whole mess. I think Texas matches up well because their offensive line should be able to handle the Kentucky defensive line. But Quinn Ewers has kind of struggled. This offense hasn't scored a bunch of points. I would not be surprised to see it look a lot like the Arkansas game.
Yep.
Okay. Up next, we have Texas Tech playing at Oklahoma State this Saturday, 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Texas Tech, 3.5-point favorites. The over-under's 67.5.
That line's disrespectful. I think Oklahoma State stinks.
Yeah,
it's a road line. So
also, the ESPN Plus is kind of disrespectful.
That's also disrespectful.
Disrespectful. That's saving everybody from this Oklahoma State team. Look, Alan Bowman's completely come back down to earth from whatever he showed in the second half of last year. Ollie Gordon is all they have on offense, and every team knows that. So, he's not doing anything. He's also kind of let his head go a couple times, it seems like, in some fan interactions this year. So, give me Tech. I think the vibes are just better. Even though they haven't been perfect in Lubbock, they're just infinitely better than what's going on in Stillwater right now.
Texas Tech's defense is 119th in the nation in total defense, 121st in the nation in scoring defense, 132nd in the nation in passing yards allowed. They need a get-right game.
This is the closest thing they're going to get to one. So,
They are 64th against the run, and that's what Oklahoma State does well here. So I think the defense probably matches up, well against the Cowboys. The issue for me is the road stuff, right? I think Joey McGuire is 5-11 on the road since becoming a head coach at Texas Tech. And they did have that big win at Iowa State the last time they were on the road. So coming off of a bye week after that Colorado loss, you would think you would get the best from the Red Raiders. This should be a good matchup.
All right, I will be at this one. East Carolina playing at North Texas this Saturday at 2:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. UNT, 3-point favorites. Over under 73.5. We need this one.
73.5.
I know.
So
East Carolina can put up points too.
Listen, you want to talk about a team that's gotten a head coaching bump since firing their head coach. East Carolina's 6-4 right now. Ever since they made the switch to Caden Hauser at quarterback, he's thrown.
Oh my God, Caden Hauser's the quarterback?
Yes, he is. 282 against Army and a
Michigan State transfer.
269 against Temple. 343 versus FAU. 314 last week against Tulsa. He's slinging it. They're on a 3-game win streak.
Good for him.
47 points per game in the last 3 games.
We got issues, UNT, because the one thing we can't have is another offense that can absolutely light you up. And if Chandler Morris does not have a perfect game, which we've seen, UNT's in trouble. Which, of course, they fired Matt Capone.
This is a bad matchup for the Mean Green.
We're trying. I'm very interested to see what defensive adjustments are done, because typically when you fire the defensive coordinator, things get simplified, right? Because obviously you're adjusting things mid-year. What does that look like? Does that have any kind of bump? You usually maybe see one game of a bump. I don't know if we'll see that. This is not the offense to kind of expect that, but anyway,
They will go to 4-2-5, by the way.
They will. Okay, so they are shifting. Yeah. Okay, so
Odom's a 4-2-5 guy, and that's where they're going to roll. And I think he's got a shot to be the DC if they close this season well on the defense side.
Not if Caden Hauser has anything to say about
it. Well, look, we're starting to get to the area, and we can move on this. Where UNT in the bowl game, we'll see. They get Temple in the last game, which Temple's awful, but if they lose this game, all of a sudden it starts to get back to the wall time next week.
Yeah, must win game.
Yeah. Well, I will be there to report on it firsthand. So
you need to do your part, Mallory.
I will do my part as a fan in the stands.
Just take the headset.
No. God. Georgia State playing at Texas State this Saturday at 6 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN+. Texas State. Anyone want to take a guess?
30.
20. Close. Over-under is 57.5.
Okay.
Shmael, how you feeling?
I'm gonna say take the under, just because Texas State's, they've gotten out to these big leads and they've kind of just, I don't say lollygag, but they've taken their foot off the gas a couple times. Last week was the game Texas State needed to get all the vibes on the right track. Got bowl eligibility, blew out a bad Southern Miss team. Jordan McLeod was healthy the whole game. We're good to go. I think it's still 9 wins is still on the table, again, including the bowl game. So things are still in a positive direction, just not as what we thought maybe with like a contending team in the playoff and a conference contending team. So things are still fine.
All right, to round it all out, number 15 Texas A&M playing at Auburn this Saturday at 6:30 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN. Texas A&M 2.5-point favorites. The over/under 46.5. Another Michigan State quarterback transfer.
Mallory, if Peyton Thorne ruins the Lone Star Showdown for us, I'm gonna be so angry. If he does this thing,
You know what? He's gonna do it. He's gonna do the funniest thing ever.
I would. He's played. I'm trying to think. I can't even say he's played well. Like, I'm trying to look at games and it was like,
he's played. He's played.
He's been there.
I mean, he played okay.
He
against
suited up.
Oklahoma, but that's kind of it.
Oklahoma stings.
They do. That's the thing. So it's like, A&M doesn't stink. Yeah, no, A&M can't lose this game. The only way this works, which I just don't think it does, because Hugh Freeze is saving up all his black magic for next week against Alabama. So I think Marcel Reed. I will say this: I think Marcel Reed has his best game since probably against an SEC team, because he needs to have a really good definitive game against a team in the SEC, which I can't think he only has one of against Florida. I think probably. I'm trying to think of the team that he beat. The one team that
LSU.
LSU. No, well, I mean it started.
Arkansas,
yes, that was the one. So I would say he has a better game this week than we've seen, because right now his resume is looking kind of stale.
Yeah.
At night in Auburn, never easy. A tough draw for the Aggies a week before the Texas game. Going to be a culture game for the Aggies. You know, it's very easy to look ahead. You know, even Mike Elko slipped in the press conference. He was like, we are singularly focused on Texas. I mean, Auburn, right? So, like,
Yeah, sure.
you're going to have to figure that out. Jarquez Hunter, a really good running back, and they have talent at wide receiver. It's an SEC team that recruits decently well, so they're going to be okay on defense. It's going to be a close game, and that 2.5-point spread will open your eyes. Vegas tends to not be too wrong about that stuff. They did this, when A&M was on the road to South Carolina. It was a close line. We saw what ended up happening there.
That's a good point.
It's a big game for A&M, because historically, this is the type of game A&M kind of messes up.
Yeah.
Just right before it's supposed to be great. Just kind of the Charlie Brown thing. They've avoided that a little bit this year. Let's see if they can do it one more time.
Yep.
Man, for our cover's sake, I just hope that doesn't happen. I want Texas and Texas A&M to be all the hype.
We're already half off with the cover, so.
Yeah, well, I guess that is true.
No. By the way, we should mention, keep an eye on TexasFootball.com for next week. We may have a little treat for y'all next week in regards to the cover heading into that game.
Yes.
So a little bit of a hint there. Hint, if you want to read something and you maybe aren't a subscriber, tune in TexasFootball.com heading into next week for that. Also, by the way, as we wrap up here, I think those are the slates for this week. I think that's everybody. All 13 teams are playing this week.
All 13 teams are back to playing this week.
So, by the way, Craven's book, of course. Speaking, I'll drop a little hint here as well. Black Friday is coming up next week. Be on the lookout for a potential deal with Craven's book. I almost messed it up again. Dave Campbell's Guide to Texas College Football. TexasFootball.com, you will see us promote more from there heading into Black Friday through that weekend, which is appropriate for the Lone Star Showdown as well. So, got some things coming for you guys next week, so please stay tuned to TexasFootball.com in regards to all of that. All right, that'll do it for us this week. Of course, stay tuned Sunday morning before the NFL games for the recap episode with Craven and Carter. Mallory, I will give one last go Rutgers for the season, because you're not letting me do one next week.
Nope.
bowl eligible, back-to-back, first time in a decade.
Well, you know what? I want to be bowl eligible too. What?
Total overhit. I'm doing a dance over.
Oh. All right, so
I love that.
They get Maryland I think it's Maryland this week, and of course
I don't know. They're already bowl eligible. Who cares?
the point is they get Michigan State next week, so I can't say go because Rutgers.
And we need to go bowling.
I was about to say Miss Sparty needs to go bowling. So go Rutgers for one last time, and Mike Elko, give us a call. We'll talk to you guys next week.